In this video, I'm going to walk you through what we did to install two 3-inch two-way speakers in the center of the dash on a 80s Bullnose Ford F-150, but this would be applicable to almost any older car where you have a 6x9 in the center of the dash. Our car didn't come with a speaker. It was a radio delete, so they had put speakers in the doors and the sound just wasn't that good. So I had kept telling my son, hey, let's put two speakers in the center where the 6x9 is supposed to go and the sound quality will go up dramatically. So what we did was we pulled the dash off, we traced out a template of the 6x9, and with that I drew a center line down the middle of the 6x9 with the 4 holes to mount it. So I drew a line down the center of the 6x9 trace out. Then I took a square and drew sides to the line to make them the side lines perpendicular. Then I drew lines around the outside to make it like a box. Then I took circle set stencils and did the corners so the corners would be rounded. Then I measured the 3-inch two-way speakers. We ended up using kickers, and they were between 3.1 and 3.1 inches on the inside and 3.49 inches on the outside. So what I did was I had a 3-inch stencil, and what's nice about a 3-inch stencil is it'll have two lines on the outside. So I lined those lines up with the center line that I'd drawn down the 6x9 and put the two 3-inch circles in there. Then I trimmed out the stencil, and then from there I took and put it on a piece of aluminum that we had laying around from an old sign that had fallen down. So I traced it out with a marker, knowing that what I'd want to do is on the outside lines cut on the center of the marker, and then on the inside lines I knew I wanted to cut on the outside of the marker because I knew I needed the circles to be a hair over 3-inch, and they were 3-inch exactly. So I traced it, then I took a transfer punch and punched the 4 holes that would hold it up into the dash off through the stencil and then into the aluminum, so it put 4 holes there. Then I took a annular cutter. I'll put a link up for that. I love those things. That's exactly what I used when I drilled out a header, my dad's headers, to put the oxygen sensor bungs in. So I used the annular cutter, cut 2 holes for starter holes for my Sabre jigsaw. I've got a Bosch. I love that thing. I've cut a lot of stuff with it over the years. It does a really nice job. You can change the speed on it and everything else, and it cut this very nicely. So I cut the 2 holes out for the speakers out of the aluminum. And then I took a round sanding, I can't remember exactly what they're called, but I'll put a link to the kit I used and on my at the bottom in the description. Then I used the round sanding drum with a 1/4-inch air grinder to kind of smooth out the round holes I'd done. Then I finished the rest of the cutout. Then what I did was I held it up to the dash where it was going to go and double checked where we had done the transfer punch, where we're going to drill the 4 holes to hold it up there, and made sure they lined up good with the holes. One of them we moved around a little bit, so we ended up drawing the 4 holes. Then I held the 3-inch speakers up on the piece of aluminum and then kind of held it up in the dash to make sure I could mount it in a way that it wasn't going to hit any the little, because each speaker had 2 screw mounts to it. So I made sure those wouldn't hit the 6x9 cutout. So from there, what I did was I drilled holes. So the holes to hold it in were for 1/4-inch bolts. The holes to hold the speakers to the aluminum plate were number 10 fasteners. So I drilled it out big enough to fit a number 10. And then what I did was put a washer on the head of the screw side. Then I had 2 washers underneath because those little tabs stick up a little bit. So, and then on the bottom I double nutted and blue Loctited, probably should have red Loctited, the number 10 screws. So I screwed all the 2 speakers onto the aluminum. Then we held the aluminum. So then I took a bunch of 1/4-inch washers because I wanted to space the aluminum down so that the speakers didn't hit the bottom of the dash. So I took a bunch of 1/4-inch washers and I flattened out one side because I knew they would be close to where the speakers were. So I flattened one side of about 8 1/4-inch washers. I ended up using 3 1/4-inch washers on each bolt between the dash and the aluminum to space it down, as you can see in the pictures. So then here's a finished picture of it mounted in to the dash, and then you can see the 4 1/4-inch bolts holding it in. I think you can kind of see how it's spaced down from the 3 washers under each one. And then here's a final picture of the dash back in place. So I hope this kind of, gives people some ideas. It sounded great. Really improved the sound of the vehicle. I would recommend this little trick if this is all you have in the dash and you don't have room to put a speaker on each side. This way you can still kind of do the fade and everything. You're not hooking up just one speaker, and the way the sound comes off the windshield and things, it really sounded good. My son and I were both very pleased with it. So I hope you liked the video. Hope it gives you some ideas. Like and subscribe.